So our next segment is a fireside chat. I would suggest that we're not going to put on the fireside because we are here in the studio and it's already extremely warm here. But we want to talk about developing and scaling advanced manufacturing. And for that, I'm going to welcome Jasmina Popovska. She is our business creation manager of the CLC East here in Vienna. She's an experienced manager with over 15 years in fund management and financial services industry. Jasmina has been working in various roles with startups and innovative SMEs in the last 8 years as a fund manager, evaluator, and as a startup mentor. Jasmina, please join me.
Thank you very much, Hannes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to the really interesting session that we will have today with two perspectives taken into account regarding developing and scaling advanced manufacturing technologies. How is it for a startup company when they develop and try to scale up this kind of solutions? What are the factors that influence their success, but also what are the obstacles on the way up? On the other side, we will have the other investor view. So we have today representatives from Joint Capital, sharing their knowledge, their expertise when they work together with startups who are coming from the industry and who are developing this kind of advanced manufacturing technologies. Before I go towards the introductions of the guests, I would like to briefly make an introduction to the topic itself. So manufacturing is evolving constantly as the needs on the market and the needs of the customers, and of course the technologies that are rising, are allowing for new products and new solutions to be brought to the customers, and usually with lower prices. Therefore, in order to react to this customer demand, companies decide to invest in advanced manufacturing technologies. And the benefits might be multifold, like to create precision, speed, flexibility, and efficiency for the manufacturing sector. However, manufacturing technology itself also significantly changed over the years. Human intervention has been reduced by software-driven industries. So we are witnessing transformation of the industry with the rise in use of virtual reality, of smart manufacturing, including machine learning, data analytics, artificial intelligence applications, nanotechnology, Internet of Things, virtual reality, and cloud computing. All these are sometimes used in different and various stages of the process, in the design improvement, product design, manufacturing, but also in information integration processes throughout the supply chain. So companies developing and scaling up this kind of technologies have certain challenges on the way up that we will discuss today. One of the challenges is related to the technology demonstration and validation, because for some companies, and especially startups, could be an issue when they deal with conservative industries and their customers. These industries are often skeptical towards innovations, as they have not yet proven themselves on the market, but also there is a significant need for proof of concept demonstration. On the other side, capital requirements can pose a barrier in the startups and also in the scale-up stage for the companies, especially that deal with hardware, with development of machinery as a new innovative solution. So the significant investments that are usually required can be really bigger in sum and amounts compared to other type of startups. On the other side, lack of funding in the R&D stage, in the development stage, can prevent the companies in order to develop and improve their innovation and to have a standstill period. For the scale-up stage, there is a quite capital-intensive equipment and machinery that limits this ability to demonstrate that the final solution will work for the companies. Still, VC funds are the ones that are, let's say, the only alternative sometimes to companies due to the long-term cycles of investments and expected returns coming from the startups. However, there are some drawbacks that companies have identified, like the VCs usually have strong expectations of payoff in the short term. And how startups address this kind of challenge is by convincing the VCs of potential long-term benefits, which is part of how these drawbacks are mitigated. Some companies in the early stage of development, in the prototype to product commercialization stage, use a combination of public funding and own resources. So when they come into the industrialization stage and the product is already taken to the market, they represent a better, more investable and less risky investment for the VCs. So due to all these startup challenges and upscaling challenges in the business side of the solution, for example, when a company comes to a stage from relatively few clients to grow into a stage for a high volume production for more customers, it can be especially capital intensive process where the funding is on that side quite important. So after these brief introductions, all these topics will be somehow tackled by our speakers today, and it's my pleasure to announce Mr. Dr. Gerald Mitteramskogler, which is an experienced entrepreneur with strong background in mechanical engineering, with more than 11 years of experience in additive manufacturing for metals and ceramics. Gerald leads Incus since 2019 on a CEO position after successfully running the head of metal division at Litos. Incus itself, it's a company born out of the R&D division of Litos. It is changing the centuries-old traditional process for shaping metals with lithography-based additive manufacturing. So now I would like to invite Dr. Gerald to come on stage and do a brief introduction.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, thanks for inviting us at the call. Thanks for allowing me to present Incus. Yeah, sorry, my name is a long Austrian name, Mitteramskogler. It's tough to pronounce, I guess. So about Incus, as we have been introduced already. So we were born out of Litos. So we develop and sell additive manufacturing, 3D printers, additive manufacturing machines for 3D printing of metals. And our new solution is that we can offer the 3D printers and the materials to really allow the production of manufacturing-like products. So for the first time allow our customers the production of really functional components, which have not been possible before, because in order for a component to be functional, you need to combine the mechanical properties of the component, and you need to also include the surface aesthetics of the parts. So all those two features combined, this is something what Incus offers to their customers. Yeah, a quick introduction to my person. I did my PhD in mechanical engineering at the Vienna University of Technology, then joined Litos for 4.5 years as a project manager. Within Litos, we had a research project, a European research project going on for the development. So Litos does 3D printing of ceramics. And in this research project, we tried to print metal powders with the ceramic machines, and it didn't really work so well. And it took us about, I would say 2.5 years and 4 prototypes to develop this new printing system we offer now at Incus. And in September 2019, we finally had the chance to fund Incus as a new company. And now we are existing now for 1.5 years. Now we have about 5 machines installed. Now the first machine in Asia, in Japan as well. So it's quite a big step for us this year.
Thank you very much, Gerald. What problem does your company solve with the technology?
Yep. So what we are addressing is really this combination of mechanical properties of the part and the surface aesthetics. This has not been possible yet with additive manufacturing. So there are about 18 or 19 different additive manufacturing approaches for metal materials, and we are the first ones who really commercialize this lithography-based approach. So Maybe some hobby 3D printer enthusiasts know DLP processing or stereolithography as a printing principle. You have this liquid photopolymer resin, and you have your 3D printer with an exposure system, typically a projector, so a home beamer, home projector unit, and you build a so-called part layer by a green part layer by layer. And in our case, we developed this photopolymer resin. We put the metal powder into the resin, and yeah, we for the first time combined the benefits of lithography, which is the great surface aesthetics, to the 3D printing of metal materials. So this is quite something new.
And how do you help the manufacturing sector in general, and which sectors do you focus on?
So with 3D printing, you have the possibility to print a variety of parts, but our USP, or where really our technology, I would say, hits the nerve, is the metal injection molding industry. Metal injection molding is, I would say, the industry for the mass production of metallic parts. I would say cell phone parts, jewelry pieces, hinges for glasses, dental brackets, dental implants, all of those mass materials or parts for USB sticks and stuff like that. Those are all produced with metal injection molding, and the metal injection molding industry, they require really complex parts, complex features, high surface aesthetics, and that was just not possible yet with additive manufacturing technologies. And now our customers, the metal injection molding companies, have an additive manufacturing solution to provide their customers prototypes, functional prototypes, and include them and get a closer connection to really do a part development. So to really support them in an early part development stage, which was just not possible before. Because in order to set up a metal injection molding production line, that takes roughly 3 or 4 months. And with additive manufacturing, you can get to a functional part within a couple of days. And that is really the novel solution for it.
Quite impressive. Thank you very much, Gerald. I would now like to invite Mr. Philippe von Klitzing, coming from Joint Capital, to join our fireside chat and also bring the investment perspective maybe on this topic. Joint Capital is a world-leading VC in the industrial space, focusing on early-stage investments based in Berlin, but with Europe-wide portfolio. And Felipe has extensive experience in the investment side, especially working with startups and with focus on industry technology and enterprise tech. So, Felipe, welcome on the fireside chat.
Thanks for having me today. Happy to participate. So yeah, my name is Philip. I'm part of the investment team at Joint Capital. As you already mentioned, we are a seed to Series A VC fund. We're based in Berlin, but we invest all over Europe. So right now we have invested in 15 companies. Only 2 are in Germany. So we have this European footprint. And we focus especially on software and industrial tech startups. And these startups are really related to core business functions, such as, procurement, R&D, production planning, or even data-driven engineering. So basically what we like are startups that generate substantial efficiency gains in the production, be it at the very beginning of the production value chain or at the end of it. So basically, we specialize in companies that are between the prototype and the product market fit, which is in industry tech very, very specific. What we like to see is, any kind of first pilot phase data or already initial recurring revenues. But all in all, what we like are really robust entry barriers that are being built through the technology. So we back very technical teams that come from that industrial field, teams that have experienced these problems in the past, and a little bit about myself. So I study economics, so it's more like a learning by doing approach here. But I studied economics. I started in investment banking and VC. I launched a startup in the logistics field, 2014. And then I worked in consulting, especially medical technologies and R&D, where I learned, let's say, the technical side of the job.
Thank you very much, Felipe. One question is regarding to your portfolio. What kind of advanced manufacturing technologies have you so far funded and supported, and what type of startups do you work with?
That's a very good question. So what we support is what we call the Neue Industry. So some sort of an enterprise-centric logic that are based on various tech enablers, if I may say so, such as, for example, additive manufacturing or automated simulation, and the idea is for us advanced manufacturing technologies. I mean, it's quite broad in the end, right? But for us, it's softwares that allow some sort of interoperability between machines, the software, and the human. So we don't necessarily believe in advanced manufacturing technologies that replace the human. We believe in such technologies that help humans be more efficient. And so all across the value chain, for example, we will look for a specific software that can bring that value, that efficiency gain to the customer. So, for example, our track record, includes, for example, a company in the procurement area, so ahead of the manufacturing capability already. How do we make price predictions on raw materials so we can have a more efficient the production process? And like from a pure manufacturing perspective, I think Flexiton is a good example. So Flexiton is a company that is that helps optimize the manufacturing process of semiconductors. So as you know, a factory has a production schedule that will dictate what should be manufactured and when it should be manufactured. But the problem is, if you have one production schedule, you have lots of different options of what to produce and when. And so by using that new machine learning, the software, helps. So it will search through all the options that are there and find the best schedule possible. And at the end of the day, what does that tell, how does it help the customer? But at the end of the day, and this is where advanced manufacturing technologies are quite interesting, I think, is that at the end of the day, you can increase the output, you can reduce the inventory, reduce the waste, but also reduce the consumption of raw material, reduce the emissions of CO2, et cetera, et cetera. So all in all, this value is really quantifiable and involves a lot of different stakeholders.
Thank you very much. You already touched upon the next question, which is how do you help the manufacturing sector innovate through the startups you support? You work heavily with the industry, and you also help not only the startups with funding, but also with getting to the new customers and to the new markets. So when you bring those solutions to the industry, let's say, how do you help? Can you share some more examples than the two ones that you just shared?
Yeah, sure. So I think, the biggest challenge of these startups is to find the right customers and find the right expertise, because oftentimes the teams that we will finance are teams that come from that area, but that don't necessarily have the time nor the resources to really get somebody with the right expertise or get the first really important customers. And so our focus is we are backed by the typical Mittelstand entrepreneur, so the backbone of the industrial economy in Germany, at least, and such those investors. They come from a wide range of industries, including the chemicals, but also manufacturing, and they're always happy to chip in when it comes to expertise and also finding the right customers. So we believe that there needs to be a bridge between the entrepreneurs who are developing the product and those partners, be it customers or investors or just regular people from companies that we know, that are always looking for new digital solutions, new advanced manufacturing technologies, but don't have the resources or nor the time to do it themselves. And we see ourselves in the middle of these two parties, and we bring them together. And one important fact is that we don't do that once we invest it. We do that before we invest, because it helps us build conviction as well. So if, for example, tomorrow I get new startup that optimizes the production in the steel industry, for example, my first reflex will be to look on our corporate platform or network platform and see who could be interested in such solution. And I will bring these two parties together, and I will let experts talk while I will be sitting in the back taking notes to better understand what the customer is talking about and what the startup is offering. This allows to bring customers as soon as possible. And so at the end of the day, if we don't invest because of XYZ reasons, at least it gave the possibility to the founder to pitch to a new potential customers. And what's important here is that once we decide to invest, we do it on a regular basis. So this is a complete, from A to Z process where there is no clear timeline. It's every day we make introductions, or we try to make introductions.
Maybe here I can add just a comment, because here it was also for us, for Incus, we have a seed investor, which is AM Ventures, and they really focused on the additive manufacturing world. And as Philippa, you described, if you have an investor who is really dedicated to his portfolio, who is an expert in the additive manufacturing field, and that was for us also the case, that they connected us to the other startups they already had in the portfolio, and that really helps a lot to think a little bit out of the box. And in our case, we are not thinking about using the software of a different startup in the AM Ventures portfolio, and it also helps to find customers we haven't thought about, and that's really helpful if you have a good investor here.
Thank you very much, Gerald. I mean, this is a really good input, especially when you decide to invest into, let's say, capital-consuming, advanced manufacturing technologies that requires extensive resources. It's always about the clear demand-driven approach, because it can guarantee certain market uptake, and it can help in the commercialization of the solution forward. So it's definitely something that can be quite a interesting and important factor when you decide developing something, testing it, and already validating the need through customers. So Gerald, could you please share some insights on your startup journey? So you started with developing some, let's say, new technology, but were there any key challenges in the beginning that made you, let's say, doubtful at certain points?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say at the early stages of the Incus of our technology, we were kind of like a geschützte Werkstatt, so really a secured space within a research project, a European project, where we could just play around, try this, build a few prototypes, and see how the technology works out. But then, at the end of the project, we really had some. I mean, for us, out of additive manufacturing, we also have parts that are created with the printer, and you show those parts to customers, and they tell you, yeah, looks good, or doesn't look so great. So, and in this early stage project, we already had a metal injection molding customer in the consortium, and this was the company OBE, Ohnmacht und Baumgärten, a metal injection molding company, and they said, they really like the parts that come out, and they will also want to do something. And this is what I want to say. I want to make the point that it's always good to have an end user, a customer of your technology on board, especially if you're doing this kind of an industrialization process. Don't just develop something, always try to bring on an adopter of your technology. And now we have the company MedShape as well. They have two of our machines and producing parts as a service provider. So we at Incus, we don't produce parts. We print them. We make the printers. We sell them. We sell the materials. But MedShape, they are doing the part production, and it's always good to have them early on at the development stage, because they are honest feedback. Sometimes it hurts if they say, well, it's not working as it should, and we expect something else. But at least you get the honest feedback, and that's really important for if you develop a manufacturing solution. You want to really make a broad adoption into the market.
Thank you very much. Philippa, what would be your thoughts here? You're working with, let's say, a series of startups, and you mentioned that you support them while they're in the early stage of development and, let's say, prototype stage, most of them. So what are the key challenges that you see in that early stage of development for the startups? Is it, let's say, lack of labor, like qualified labor? Is it lack of financing resources? Is it maybe the market product fit validation and the length of time for the development?
That's a very good question. And if you specialize in industry technology, you see some recurring patterns, which means that you can then take these learning and go forward. And we learn as much as the founders. So every day is a setback for both as investors, but also founders. But I think the two key topics here are, first one, it's some people have to understand that in industry technology, and I think Gerald is probably agreeing on that, but the sales cycle are extremely long. And so if you don't have investors with expertise or with the patience to confront this fact, then it's difficult. So it takes a lot of patience on the investment side, but also on the development side. Both parties, must understand that this is something they cannot avoid. Industrial companies are very are slow movers. It's very conservative, as you mentioned in your introduction, despite having a software stack. So I'm just talking about the software here that is increasingly integrated. But I think a key development roadblock here is that teams don't necessarily have the patience and the nerves to spend a lot of time. Decision making is difficult. There's a lot of paperwork. And if you identify the right, let's say, champion within a customer, you really have to hold him, because if he's gone, then your entire sales cycle will likely start from the beginning. So we will have lost a little bit of time, and sometimes a pivot is really necessary. So I was mentioning the semiconductor startup. They provide this like scheduling, so making sure that you have the right production schedule. They started across a wide range of industries, but the problem they faced was that they were having lots of different pilots on lots of different industries with lots of different problems. And then they realized, well, there was one industry where our discussions with potential customers yield the fact that all these customers have the same issues. So the scalability, the fact that you can reproduce the solution or the business case on every single customer is easier. So they decided to drop the $500,000 revenue they had with the other industries to start from scratch with just one industry. And now it's getting better. But in terms of patience, these guys lost almost 2 years in development, which can be hard. But if you are very if you show some understanding, that's fine. And then the second point, as you mentioned, is team. Definitely. I mean, we look at very technical teams that have experience in such industries, and oftentimes, you have these very technical teams, and when we started discussions with them, we realized that they have high difficulties finding the right talent that has both the technical expertise, let's say in semiconductor, for example, but also a sales mindset. Because as your product kind of stands, now the question is, how do you sell it? How do you provide other customers with your solution? And just a founder-led sales team is not enough anymore. So I think talent is a pretty common roadblock, and we try to help them as much as we can finding those people, but it's not always easy.
Thank you very much. It's always interesting to see the perspective from more startups at once. So thank you very much for summarizing this very well. And Gerald, if I may ask you, what would be your advice to startup teams that are dealing and are developing in an early stage this kind of advanced manufacturing technologies, especially the additive manufacturing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my advice is always the costs for developing a new solution, to the costs for developing the technology, don't underestimate it. It's always a little bit more than you think, and Especially if it's a completely new technology, you might find some technological roadblocks you might need to remove. So also have a good investor that has the right mindset, that is in for the long run and not for a short-term investment. That is really important. Always also have the right people with the right mindset on board. Have the people who are who know what they are getting into. If it's a young team and you want to play with the big guys in the industry, you have to follow certain regulations. You have to follow certain rules. Of course, you as a young team, you have no idea about those rules, and you need to learn by doing, learn by hitting a wall a few times, and that's sometimes frustrating. So, yeah, of course, your team members or the venture capital guys, they will help you, and every time you have a question, they will, of course, they will support you. But at the end, it's learning by doing. So, don't be afraid of a steep learning curve, especially for the founding teams. And it's always good if you're looking for investors. I think it's if you're especially dealing with a manufacturing technology or with an industrial solution, you need to show kind of this exponential hockey stick growth, because I think the machine business or this industry business selling printers is not really, I would say, a sexy business case for any venture capital fund. So I would say always emphasize or look early at your business model if you want to. How can you increase the sales? For us, it's also selling, of course, the material, selling software around the printer as well, because it's not only the printer. You need to have as Philippe mentioned, you need to have a manufacturing software. How do you schedule your parts? Maybe how do you follow from the design of the parts to the printing to the post-processing, and at the final application, you want to really include the whole process chain in the software. And I think this is where it cannot be reduced only to the printer. You need to look at a broader scale at the whole product.
And when you're there, Gerald, and what would be the best way to prove your solution to the customers when you have this kind of a product, and when you're, let's say, in an early stage and you still have to prove yourself on the market?
Yeah, get it out as soon as possible. It's a banana. It should ripen at the customer, I guess. No, but always make sure you communicate clearly that if you're selling a beta system, the customer need to be aware. And of course, if you're selling a beta system, you also need to be aware that involves a little bit more customer support and application support. But if you have a customer with the right mindset, and he's also willing to not only look at the costs and at the problems, but also at the big gains on the other hand, if it actually works, then you found somebody you can work with.
Thank you very much, Gerald. So we will go with a question to Philippe to share with us some information on the main challenges and key factors during the portfolio startups' growth and, let's say, scaling up from their business perspective. So what is the key factor for success for them, but also for you as an investor?
That's a very good point. Like a very good question. I think the most important, let's say, milestone they have to reach at early stage is really, are they able to prove that their customers will achieve, something clear, something that can be quantifiable using that new solution. And for us, it's extremely important because, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. You will have difficulties getting so no customer will test your solution if you cannot prove that it somehow has worked somewhere else. And so with one very good pilot, for example, at early stage, that has a clear value proposition, the door is already half open. So for us, that's extremely important. Also, I think at early stage, what is very crucial is that a team can show flexibility and also fast iteration. So that actually goes back to what Gerald said. Can the founders show enough flexibility and hard work to quickly change a product if the customer feedback is not good? That will be highly appreciated by by the customer who doesn't want necessarily to do something themselves. So they have to help them integrate as quickly as possible without having the customer to touch anything, because the customer is very conservative. He's always like, oh yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll see internally, maybe it could be too complicated because we have too many departments. If the founding team is able to show that they don't have to move anything, and that they will take care of it, this kind of ease of implementation, that is definitely something that we'd like to see. But I think like still a key issue is that a lot of companies still don't necessarily understand that a great way to shorten the sales cycle, and this is also at early stages, is to team up with partners, so channel partners. In industrial tech, we see that a lot of integrators use different solutions, and so when you develop a new solution, but you have limited resources, if you're able to show that it might decrease your margin, but the upside is that you will increase the scalability of your solution, because those system integrators need to provide new solutions to their own customers. That's a great way in early stage to show that the value is there. And if all these points are there in the beginning, then we know that at least these new startups will have a pretty quick, I wouldn't say hockey stick, because hockey stick is very quick, but at least it will overcome the common roadblocks. And we have seen that in our portfolio. Oftentimes, these kind of quick win solutions, would reduce the development time or the scalability, or increase the scalability in a very short amount of time. So that's something that we really like.
Thank you very much. And the question now related to the investments, to Gerald. When it comes to investments and let's say resources that are needed for this type of technology development, and being a spin-off company from successful business, what are the specifics when you raise funding? Because you already have a big player behind you with established market. How is it for a spin-off company? Is it easier than for a startup starting alone from the scratch? Or there are certain challenges that you face also as a company in that regard?
Yeah, you're right. From certain perspective, it helps a lot to have already. In our case, it was Litos, the 3D printing of ceramics that was already, or that is still, a very successful name in the 3D printing business. And then if we approach customers of Litos who are also not only printing ceramics, but also also looking into metal additive manufacturing, then we are a spin-off Litos. We have the same quality, but with metal materials. That of course helps a lot in the introduction, and as I mentioned, also the whole development of the product. If you have the resources of basically a whole company behind you, then that of course that helps. On the other hand, if you want to find the downside, as a founder, or as myself, founder of Incus, if I would have developed it completely on my own, I would have a little bit more of the shares of the company. So in this case, I would have some the original shareholders of Litos, and of course, on the other hand, it's me and a colleague who developed the metal printing business. So the upsides tremendously outweigh the downsides here.
And when it comes to customers and markets, how big is the impact of, let's say, the mother company in this case?
Yeah, we decided to split Incus from Litos because the metal additive manufacturing market is 10 times or even more larger than the ceramics additive manufacturing market. And on the metal additive manufacturing industry, there are big players out there, like maybe you heard of Desktop Metal, Digital Metal, or the other American companies who have I would say a more marketing-driven approach compared to us European customers who focus more on the technology. So we had to show a little bit different approach. They also increase marketing budgets to do and try to get investors on a little bit earlier to speed up the growth of the company. And in our case, we try to, or we still do, we try to get the best out of both worlds, have a solid technology, but also learn from the big guys how they do the marketing and how they approach the market, because that helps us quite a lot. That's also a big difference, because metal additive manufacturing is in the news. The industry is quite aware that metal additive manufacturing is happening, and then they see us because the other technologies don't perform so well because they're more marketing driven, and then they have us come to us and they see, well, the technology can work, and then they have that helps us to get noticed.
Thank you very much, Gerald. It's really interesting from both sides to have a VC partner that it's bringing also customers as, let's say, pilot customers, or a big company helping you grow, not only with the technology and with the customers and the markets, but also from this knowledge regarding how to position on the market your product and other, let's say, operational issues. So what were the main factors during Incus growth that were crucial for the success in upscaling the production, let's say, to a larger production and more customers? You mentioned Japan, so probably going even to different markets than currently, it requires a lot of resources. And how do you deal with it? How did you make it?
Yeah, we're still in the middle of the progress. So it's we would say we have now our series printer, but we are definitely far away from any sort of industrial-sized mass production with additive manufacturing. But we, as I mentioned before, we have the company MedShape. We now have Micromim in Japan who want to go the journey with us and develop to do the necessary steps to integrate additive manufacturing in a mass production process. So I'm pretty sure there will be many challenges ahead of us, but yeah, have the right partners to actually tackle those challenges. That's important, and it's always good to have really a close connection, because in our case, the production process, it's not only the 3D printing, which is, I would say, sometimes the easiest step in the whole production chain, but getting from this printed part to the functional, the part, the really shiny part that you can put into a machine, or you can put into somebody's body as an implant or something. There are so many steps in between which you just can't do yourself as a small startup. Here you need established companies who know the processes, know how those operations work. So get those companies on in an early stage. And also maybe, which another lesson I have learned from my side, really prioritize. It's important, or we could do so many things at once, and we can here do a small feasibility study or innovation study with a small customer here, or we can do a few here, but it sucks up a lot of resources from the customer support, from the sales team, and it would be much better. The ideal customer would just buy 5 machines, and you would only send in 1 application engineer, and you can handle everything. But you have to really look for this kind of customer, because at the end, all this side work consumes a lot of your time.
Thank you very much.
Just as a side note.
And one more question to Felipe before we close the session. Felipe, you mentioned you invest in early stage and prototype stage of the companies, but then they overcome this phase and become, let's say, more investable for later stage investors and are raising the second round probably. So what are the major, let's say, needs or requirements when they come to this stage in order to be investable?
That's a very good question, because in industry technology, if you are able to prove that you provide value, then industrial companies, industrial customers are happy to pay the price for it. And this price is oftentimes very high. So we're really talking about enormous contract values, which brings people to ask themselves, well, do I need funding if I'm able to sell huge contracts to these companies? But I think like founders don't, they shouldn't expect to scale the product across all the customers' factories or production plants once the pilot is done. So if I'm talking about an investment in the seed stage, and then the next stage would be in 18 months, once they have pilots, then they will go out on the market looking for a higher investment round by saying, listen, we have these post-pilot timelines, but it will make a case investable if the timeline is realistic. Every single, if I'm having a very successful pilot project with BMW, for example, if I'm showing after that once the pilot is done, because the data is really good, I'm able to roll out to 15 of these BMW factories, yielding millions of revenues. Investors will say, well, it's a bit naive to think that every factory at BMW has the same data collection methods, the same connectivity and the same application requirements. So the case is investable the next round if it's realistic enough about what it is able to achieve in terms of value for the customers. But the first pilot is really important for the next funding stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both of you. It was a really interesting and intensive session, and I hope all the startups that were today with us learn something that will be valuable for them, and maybe even approach you to check if their solution is investable from your perspective. I can summarize that the demand-driven approach is a very important success factor for commercialization and subsequently the business growth of a company. So having the right market need identified and already working closely with a partner coming from the industry in the development will hopefully shorten that stage of development and also iteration and finding the right product market fit for, let's say, technologies that need a little longer life cycle in order to develop them and then launch them on the market and then upscale the production. On the other side, having a VC partner that is appropriate and looking into more long-term investments, it's something that is quite important. So thank you very much to the speakers today.